Hey guys, so this is a bit of an impromptu video. Really wasn't hoping I'd ever have to make a video like this, but I'm going to talk about an incident which occurred, and if you guys saw in my last video, I said that I was dealing with some things and I had to do with an airline. Now, I just want to start off by saying that I don't want to hold the airline company responsible for what happened, and I'm really just awaiting a response from them, and it's more of what the employees did and how they handled the situation. So I'm going to just tell you guys what the situation was and go through it, and I'd like to hear back from you guys, and I'd really appreciate if at the end of this video you shared it if you think what they did was incorrect, and if you feel that the employees handled the situation unjustly and unfairly. So a few days ago, my parents, my mom and my sister, they were traveling out of the country, and they were going to Egypt, and they had their tickets were non-direct. They had two layovers, one in Toronto and one in Frankfurt. And from Frankfurt, they were to go to Cairo. So everything was good. Their connection in Toronto was on time, and then the flight into Frankfurt was on time as well. It landed at 7:30. Upon arrival, my mom and sister, it's a pretty long flight from Toronto to Frankfurt, they decided to get something to eat. It took about 15 minutes. So 7:30, it's now like 7:45, say 7:50 at the latest. And then travel from that terminal to the terminal which they were departing from takes about 25-30 minutes because of basically you have to take like a kind of like a tram. I'm not really sure what it is exactly in Frankfurt. I've never had to do a transfer like that there, but my sister was explaining to me it's kind of like Dulles Airport, if you guys have ever been there, and you have to take those things to travel in between the terminals. So upon arrival to security for the gate, it was about like 8:40, 8:45 say, and my sister, she's standing in line for security. Her boarding time, by the way, on her boarding pass, which they look at for security, it states that boarding is at 9:30. So now it's 8:45, and she's in line, and security tells everyone, as they do always, they're like, any liquids or consumables, pull out of your bag. If you have any laptops or iPads, pull those out of your bag as well. My sister's carrying a digital camera. She asks security, it's a DSLR, she asks them, she says, do I need to pull this out of the bag? Security informs her that it's not required to pull a DSLR out of the bag. So she doesn't pull it out, and they go through security, they get through right away, the line wasn't that long, and security holds her bag to the side. Now she's standing there, she's waiting for security to go to the through the bag, waiting for something to happen, or security to let her know what the process was next. They didn't. It's now been 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and they haven't gone through the bag. She informs them, she lets them know, my boarding time is coming up. I have a flight to catch. If you guys could please go through the bag. They ignore her. They don't even acknowledge that she's talking to them. And then, it's now been like 35 minutes. They finally ask her to come over to the bag, and they ask what's inside the bag. She tells them a DSLR, and they say, oh, that's why your bag was pulled to the side. And then they ask her to empty it, even though they had told her that the DSLR didn't need to be pulled out of the bag. So, and if you guys don't know, I'm Middle Eastern. I don't know if you could tell from my name, but I have a Middle Eastern background. My mom, she does wear the headscarf, the hijab. And, my sister was traveling with her. So I don't want to say this was discrimination, and I honestly, I'm still in the process of, contacting several people, but that's just something to note for this whole situation. So after this, after they tell her to start pulling the things out of the bag, she starts taking things out, and then security is like, get your hands off the bag, we're going to go through it. And then they do an intensive pat down of her, and they start pulling the items out of the bag. And by the way, by now it's past 9:30. And they're well aware of her ticket time, and they have the ticket. She's informed them of the time she's supposed to get on the plane and board. And they do a pat down, and they start going through each pocket of the bag, pulling one item out at a time and laying it down on the ground. So when they're done with all of this, it's already 10 o'clock, and they tell her, we're done. Go ahead and stick your stuff back in the bag. So they don't even stick the stuff back in the bag for her. Rather, they just tell her to deal with it, and then they just leave her, knowing very well that her boarding time has well passed, and it's come and gone. So there's really no chance that she's going to catch this plane. So she puts everything back in the bag, runs over, tries to catch her plane. Obviously, she's missed it. This is with Lufthansa, by the way. And so she goes to the Lufthansa rebooking desk, and they tell her, well, we're not the ones handling your itinerary. Since you came through Canada, the whole itinerary is handled by Air Canada. And it's your fault that you missed your plane. Right off the bat, they're just very aggressive with her. They tell her that it's her fault rather than, trying to sympathize with her and understand what the situation was. So then she goes over to the Air Canada desk. And by the way, my sister, she's really hardworking. She works 2 jobs. She's in college. She's 21. If you guys don't know, we grew up with not a lot of money. So every penny she earns, she works for it hard. She goes over, and she's super, super polite, by the way. She would never, get mad at anyone or anything. So she goes over to the Air Canada desk, and she asks Air Canada, she says, she explains the situation to them, and it's an old German lady, and she tells her, once again, it's your fault that you missed your flight. I'm going to have to, if you want to rebook, you're going to pay $300 for a rebook, and there's no flights leaving today. And while this is all occurring, they're rebooking people from her same flight that have missed it because of the short connection time onto a new flight to leave back, onto Cairo. So my sister, they're talking for about 20 minutes, and then the German lady calls over another lady and starts speaking to her in German, pointing over to my sister and, pointing at my mom and smirking and laughing, and they do this for about 15 minutes. While this is all occurring, my sister starts looking up flights on her phone. She finds several flights connecting from Frankfurt to Cairo with open seats and tickets available for purchase. So she asked the lady, she's been now talking to this other lady in German and, about their whole situation, which I believe if you're in customer service or, just general manners, if someone doesn't speak a language and you're dealing with a situation with them, that you should probably you should speak the common language, especially if you know English and they know English. So, or whatever language it is. So this all happens. My sister informs her, she's like, I see flights here. How come you're unable to find these? And she's like, well, they're not appearing in my system. So my sister said if they could take a look together on the system. This lady became very aggressive with her. And my sister asked, well, can I get your name and your customer relations contact information? The lady then informed her that she was doing her a favor and that she would be unable to give her the customer relations number and that she would be unable to give her her name because then she would get in trouble. Now, as this is all occurring, I have no idea what type of customer service this is and if Air Canada condones this. And I'm in the process of contacting them. So my sister goes over to the last minute booking desk. It's just for any flight. And she asks what flights are available. She finds one on Turkish Airlines for $700. $700 one way from Frankfurt to Cairo. This is about a 4-hour, 5-hour flight, by the way. So this is ridiculously overpriced, and this is for economy. So she goes back to the lady and she lets her know, I found a ticket for $700. How come you can't find me a ticket to leave here? And by the way, she's also found tickets on Air Canada. And the lady tells her, I don't know. I don't know why that is, and you won't be leaving here today. So my sister says, what am I supposed to do? If I don't have the money, am I just stuck here in Frankfurt until I can scrounge it up? And the lady's response is pretty appalling. She tells her, it's like going to the store for bread. If you don't have money, you don't eat. Wow. I honestly don't know what to say to that. So after this, my sister, she realizes this is going nowhere with this German lady, and she goes over to the last minute booking desk and decides to just book this $700 flight rather than paying $300 and being, stuck in Frankfurt or Germany for however long. You don't even know, you might have to end up spending way more in hotel fees and everything and room and board and whatnot. So she books this flight and she leaves Canada. She leaves Frankfurt and goes on to Cairo. Upon arriving to Cairo, she's informed that her bags have been lost and that they have not arrived. They were never put on the plane for the transfer, even though she gave them all the transfer information. So now not only has she spent $700, which she doesn't have, to, book this last minute flight because she was unjustly treated, but now she has nothing. She's on a 3-week vacation. She has nothing. And she goes, so they tell her this long story over at that airport, and she goes, they say, the bags are scheduled to arrive to the next day at 1 p.m. She goes back, the bags aren't there. And they give her the runaround and tell her a completely different story. And so she contacts someone else, and, they inform her that it's more than likely that her bags have been stolen, and that, the reason they're giving multiple stories is because they really don't know what happened to these bags. So my sister, you know, she calls me crying on the phone, and you know, as you can imagine, this is a pretty stressful situation. You've just spent a ton of money. The airlines has completely ruined everything, and it was all because they chose to treat her unfairly during the security check. So I go through the, well, I didn't personally, but a friend of mine went through the Air Canada terms and policies, and it turns out that if you're involuntarily held or voluntarily held from getting on to a plane, that Air Canada is to rebook you on the next Air Canada flight out of the country free of charge. Not a $300 fee, but free of charge. And I'll link that agreement down in the comments section, or sorry, in the information below this video. But I just wanted to give you guys a rundown of that whole situation, and I wanted to see, you know, what you guys think of it. And I'd really love to have feedback from you and see, you know, how you think I should handle the situation, or how you think Air Canada should handle the situation, and the employee that did this. So yeah, that's really it. Yeah, so I hope to hear back from you guys. Thank you.